Now that we have our mounting assembled, we need to start setting our stones. To begin with, use a bud burr that is slightly smaller in diameter than our side diamonds. Cut straight down into the center of the crowns. This will remove the bulk of the gold and make room for the pavilion of the stone. Plus it will create less wear on our setting burr. Cut straight down in and go back and forth cutting each side crown to the same depth. We then use a straight-sided setting burr the same diameter as the diamond. Cut straight down into all 4 prongs. In this way we're assured that all 4 prongs are cut to the same depth. We need to carefully watch the angle that we hold the burr so that we cut straight down into the crown. Turn the mounting to look at different angles to make sure all 4 prongs are cut evenly. Then, without the burr turning, place it into the 2 crowns and examine to see that the sides are cut to the same depth. If one is cut lower than the other, our diamonds are not going to be even when they're set. Then take a fine needle file and just very lightly file the sides of the prong to remove any burrs of metal that the cutting burr left. Then set the diamonds into the crowns and press them down with the back side of the tweezers. We're using a fine-tipped watchmaker tweezer here. Set both diamonds into the seat and press them down. They should fit snugly. If they fit loosely, you moved your burr around when you were cutting and cut too big of a seat. With both diamonds in place, we can examine it to make sure that both stones are setting at the same depth and they are setting at the same angle. To set the prongs down over the diamond, we use this pair of modified bent nose pliers. The pliers have a groove cut in the center of the jaws on the inside. This groove will fit on the prongs to keep it from slipping off. If we slip off the prong, it would be real easy to chip the edge of the diamond. Place one jaw on top of the prong and the other at the base of the ring on the opposite side. Gently squeeze and bend the prong over a little bit. You do not want to bend the prong all the way down tight on the diamond at this time. Bend one prong a little bit and then bend the opposite prong over. By working opposite prongs, you'll keep the diamond straight and keep it from slipping crooked in the crown. Go around and bend all 4 of the prongs on each diamond. Then take the ring out of the ring clamp and pull straight down on the prongs to finish setting them tight on the stones. This one inside prong isn't bending as easily as the others. Instead of using extra force, we file the back side of the prong. It's not bending as easily because it's thicker. We did not cut into that prong as deep as the other prongs. So file a little bit off the back side of the prong and then it will easily bend over. If a prong doesn't bend over easily, don't use extra force to force it down on the diamond. That's the best way to chip a diamond. If it's not bending, then you need to examine it to find out what the reason is. Generally, it's just a little thicker than the other prongs, and you just need to file a little bit off. Once the prongs are down tight on the diamond, examine them to make sure both diamonds are straight and even and set to the same depth. We then use a fine-cut triangular needle file called a 3-square file. This file has a modified edge on it. We rub the edge of the file on a sharpening stone to remove the teeth on the very edge. We can run this edge on the diamond and be assured that the safety edge that we created will not chip or abrade the diamond. File the prongs back so that all the prongs are the same length and height, and start rounding the tips of the prongs off. Next, we use a concave cutter, also known as a cup burr. We want a cup burr that will fit over the prong, but not so far down that it will hit the diamond. Turn this burr very slowly and roll it around the end of the prong to round off the very tip. You do not want to turn this burr very fast because all the cutting teeth are on the inside of the cup, and as it cuts metal away, those metal chips cannot flow out of the teeth easily. So if you turn this burr too fast, you can easily overheat and burn the burr. You want to turn it slowly, so as it cuts, it doesn't have a big accumulation of metal filings on the inside of the burr. Brush the filings away left from the cup burr, Then use a fine-tipped onglet graver to cut around the ends of the prongs. Between filing the prongs and using the cut burr, there will be a flashing of metal extending from the prongs out over the diamond. If this is left, it makes your work look sloppy, so we're using this onglet graver to carefully trim that excess metal away. We then go back to our needle file. Now we want to blend in the top of the prong from where the cut burr stopped cutting down the side of the prong. Then use a bristle brush to polish the tops of the prongs and the sides of the crown. Once we get the center stone set, it will be difficult to have access to these prongs, especially the two closest to the center crown. And that's why we completely finish these prongs now before we set the center stone. To begin to set the center stone, we use a small pair of dividers and place a mark on the side of each prong. Mark both sides of the prong. We're marking from the under bezel up the side of the prong so that there's a mark on each prong the same distance up from the under bezel. This will be the line that we want the girdle of the stone to set at. So when we cut our seat for our center stone, we want to cut down to this line. We then use a straight-sided setting burr that is slightly smaller in diameter than the width of the stone. Cut each prong right at the line that we scribed on the side of the prong. We scribed lines on both sides of the prong so that regardless of the angle that we hold the mounting, we have a line to view to be certain we're cutting at the right depth. We want to use a burr that is big enough that will not fit in between the prongs. If you try to cut the prongs with too small of a burr, it will be easy for the burr to walk around the prong and mar the outside of the prongs. Once we cut the seat in the prongs, we test fit it with our center stone. We do not want to overcut the prongs. It's better to cut a little bit and try to fit the stone, and then see which prong we need to cut deeper. Then go back and cut a little more, then test again. If you try to cut the final seat the first time, it's easy to cut too deep into the prong and remove too much metal. So we cut a little bit, test fit the stone, and then go back and cut a little bit more until each prong is cut to the proper depth. Once the stone fits properly and we know our seat is cut correctly, we take a fine needle file and file on the sides of the prong, once again removing any burr of metal that is left from cutting the seat. Once filed, we use a silicone rubber wheel to remove any file marks and polish the sides of the prongs. Once the stone is in place, it will be very difficult to access the sides of these prongs, and so we want to remove all the file marks and have a nice polish on the sides of the prongs. Then place the center stone down into the seat, and again using our modified bent chain nose pliers, we begin bending the prongs over the stone. Always work opposite prongs. Put one jaw of the pliers on top of the prong and the other to the base of the crown on the opposite side and bend the prong over. Then rotate the plier to bend the opposite prong. Go around and bend each of the 6 prongs a little bit and check the stone to make sure it's in the seat. It's set straight and it's even on all sides in all directions. We then take our pliers again and finish bending each of the prongs over. Bend each prong a little bit and keep working around the stone, bending opposite prongs until all the prongs are down tight on the stone. Then take a pair of chain nose pliers and straighten the prongs to make sure that each prong angles directly from the outside of the stone to the very center of the stone. While bending these prongs over, it's easy for the prongs to be pointed crooked. So while they are long, we straighten them out so they're all pointing towards the center of the stone. These prongs were left extra long so we have a little more leverage in bending them over. So now we take a very fine saw blade, here we're using a 6/0 blade, and cut the length of the prongs back so that we do not have too much prong extending over the center stone. Just go around the stone cutting each prong to the same length. Once we have those all cut off, we go back to our 3 square needle file with the safety edge and start shaping our prongs. We want to file the height of the prong down so that they are all approximately the same size and the ends are rounded to start forming the shape. We then use a cup burr again. This one is slightly larger than the one we used on the side stones to accommodate the larger prongs. But again, you do not want a burr that's big enough to fit over the prongs all the way down to the stone. You do not want to touch the stone with your cup burr. Then, turning the burr very slowly, go around each prong and round off the tip of the prong. This will not only give a nice look to the prongs, it will also help to keep them from snagging on the lady's clothing and hair. Always use plenty of lubricant on all your burrs whenever you are cutting. The setting burrs, the cup burrs, all the burrs that you use needs to be lubricated to keep them from burning. Next, use a graver to go around and cut the flashing on each prong. On the small side stones we used an onglet graver, but since the center stone is larger and there's more room between the prongs, we're using a flat graver to trim them. The wide cutting surface of the flat graver helps to keep you from scratching the stone. The very fine tip of the onglet graver could scratch a soft center stone. We then use our needle file with the safety edge to once again blend the top of the prong down the side. We want to file right where the cup burr finished cutting and blend the rounded top created by the cup burr down the side of the prong. Then use a knife edge pumice wheel to remove any file marks from each prong and clean them up. At this time, if you see any file marks on the side of the crown, go ahead and remove those. This is our final cleanup, so any file marks that you see are any marks from the pliers that were left. We need to clean those up to get this ring ready for a final polish. We then use a bristle brush to polish the prongs and down in between the prongs. Go over the whole top of the ring, making sure that everything is nice and smooth and polished. Then polish the ring on the buffing machine and clean it in the ultrasonic. And our colored stone ring with the side diamonds is now finished and ready to be delivered to our customer. A fairly new jeweler starting out may take 5 or 6 hours or more to put this ring together. A good jeweler with experience should be able to assemble this ring and set the stones in a couple hours, definitely less than 3 hours. If you are hand fabricating this ring instead of the 2 to 3 hours, you're looking at 8 to 10 hours. So there's definitely a time savings and a price savings in making this ring from cast findings rather than hand fabricating the entire ring.